You have frozen on my end.
Okay, yeah.
Oh,
Okay. So how's that? No, we shouldn't get any feedback now.
I'm not having any feedback.
Okay, so we are live on YouTube right now. So
Hi, word. Behave.
I'm going to pass the baton.
Okay, so can you make me a co-host, I guess?
Yeah, I'm going to change you to the host. So you are now the host.
I'm the host now. I see.
So you should see if you go to your participants list.
Yes, I see people are waiting.
Yep, you should see people waiting. And what you want to do is get them to identify themselves if it's not readily apparent.
I have Carol's iPad, an iBook G4, and an iPad, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to unmute them all, and then I'm going to ask them who they are. But first, before I do that, I'm going to do a few other things here. We have the waiting room enabled. We have the share screen. They can rename themselves. Ready?
Yep.
And yeah, no, okay. Okay, yeah, so there's just 7 people are waiting. Okay, so I can only see 3 of them. Oh, no, I see. I can. Phil Deckert's on. All right, so I'm going to admit Phil. Cynthia Hewitt's on. I'm going to admit them. Some Richard Martin and Pam Pickett. I'm going to admit. And then I'm going to. Okay, so who is Carol? Okay, so if as people join, if you can just mute yourself, that would be lovely. We're going to try to, we have some people who are unidentified. We're going to try to get them in. So just hang on. So again, if you're joining, just mute yourself. So Scott, how can I ask a person without admitting them?
I think you have to admit them and ask them, and if they don't identify themselves, you
then I will remove them. Okay. Yep. So I'm seeing Carol's iPad. Carol, you need to identify yourself. So unmute yourself and tell me who you are. This is Kevin Geiger.
Might be Nelson Lamson, maybe.
So Carol's iPad, you should see Carol's iPad on your screen, whoever you are, just tell me who you are.
It's just Carol and Nelson Lamson.
Excellent. Okay, good. You can stay in the meeting, Nelson. Very good.
Thank you.
Okay. Next one. iBook G4. Who are you?
Jerry Fields.
Hi, Jerry. Very good. Okay. And then I have a couple more people here. I'm going to admit we have Jane. Jane. Jane, can you hear me? Who's ever identified as Jane out there? Jane?
Get that picture in the right, see if it'll let me put your picture in there.
And Betsy, I'm going to admit.
Maybe not.
And iPad, I'm going to admit. Lydia Spitzer. So when you first come on, if you can mute your computer, and if I call on you, you'll see a symbol or your face or something up there that's you. I'm going to try to identify everybody in this meeting. So I have somebody that's merely identified as iPad. So you need to identify yourself.
Is he talking about us?
That would be who's ever just talked. Yes, who's that?
Yes, Alan Blackburn.
Oh, okay, very good. This is just our little security thing. We're trying to make sure everybody, we don't really care too much. You know, we're not going to kick you out. We're just making sure that everybody's here is actually a real person who should be in a meeting like this.
Yes, we are real.
Yeah, good. Okay. And so for those of you out there, you should practice muting and unmuting yourself. You should make sure you're only using one form of audio, so you should not have the phone and the computer audio going at the same time, because you'll get a
Yeah, I'm far away.
echo deal going there.
Are we muted?
No,
The iPad is not muted. I'm going to mute you right now, though. I can do that too on my end. If things get a little crazy, I can mute you all if necessary. So down bottom of all your screens, you should see several things going on. One of the things you should see is reactions. And you can give me a thumbs up, or you can clap your hand, and you can do some other things as well. So hang on here. And I'm going to share my screen in a minute. Oh, yeah, I'm just got to admit more people. We have Billy Emmons is in. Betsy Rhodes is in.
I don't know where.
There we go. Charles.
There we go. That's how you mute it right there. Huh?
Yeah.
Kevin,
Yes.
where's the little hand? Where's the little hand? I don't see my little hand.
So do you, down bottom of your screen, do you see a little icon that says reactions, like a little happy face or anything?
Yeah, I got that.
In there, if you tap that, you
I-
can get a couple of things.
I've got a clap and a thumbs up, but not
Yes,
a raise
that's
your hand thing. which-
That's a clap and a thumbs up. Yes, that's right now. Yeah.
So where's the raise your hand thing?
Well, I'm gonna try to find it here.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. We're just getting everybody in the door first here. Let's see. I gotta see if there's anybody else waiting. Doot. And admit. And admit. Okay. See if anybody else needs to be admitted. People are joining. This is great. Okay. So again, as you hop on, if you can just mute yourself, that's good. Otherwise, I'll mute you. So Chuck, I just muted you, just so you know. Betsy, I just muted you. Okay, just making sure. Okay, people are still coming in the meeting. That's fine. And this is Kevin Geiger, just your slightly wayward Zoom master. So just bear with us all here as people come in the door, as it were. Oh, another person's coming in. Ding. So we'll wait for a little bit, and then hopefully everybody's in who wants to be in. And then we will begin. Then I'm going to unmute Emily, and she's going to start us off. I'm kind of just give people a quick recap of how we got to where we are. And then she'll come back to me, and we'll open this thing up. Okay. All right. I'm stopping hearing any more little doorbell sounds. And I'm just making sure everybody is in who wants to come in. Okay, nobody is left waiting out there as far as I know. All right. So first off, since I can see you, but I'm not sure you can all see you. I can't actually physically see you. Some of you are just black squares with a little name out there. So I am going to go around and call out everybody's on my screen here. And I'm just gonna, we are recording this, or we are recording it, right, Scott? Or do I need to press the button down there?
Let me go ahead and start the recording.
Okay.
Actually, Kevin, you'll need to do that on your end if that's okay.
Okay, I'm gonna record to the cloud.
Yep. Actually, it's going to record to your computer, but we'll deal with that later.
Okay. All right. Just so everybody knows, this is recorded. This is also being live streamed on YouTube somehow. So later on, you can rewatch it if you need to, if you're really into it. So you're all public. So just so be aware, this is the public realm, even though you're safely home in your pajamas. So hang on, I got to admit one more. And now I'm going to go around. I'm going to unmute everybody. So I just unmuted you all, I believe. So don't talk unless you need to talk. So, looks like Jerry Fields, iBook G4. Jerry, you want to say hi?
Hi.
Very good. And Bill Lemons, you want to say hi?
Present, hi.
Betsy Rhodes.
Hello.
Chuck Gunderson.
Yes, hi.
Betsy Seebeck, I see, yes.
Hi.
And Scott Woodward.
Here.
And Pam Pickett.
I'm here.
Excellent, thank you. Cynthia Hewitt.
Yes.
Very good. Richard Martin.
Good evening.
Good evening. Carol's iPad, who is that? That says Nelson, is that right?
Nelson, Carol Lamson, yep.
Okay, excellent, great. I'm just going around and muting you as I go. The iPad, I forgot who is that? Who says just iPad on there?
Alan Blackmer.
Alan Blackmer, excellent. John Peters.
Hello.
Ben Brickner.
Hi, everyone.
Alan Graham.
I'm here. Hi, everyone.
Laura Kent.
Hello. And Sherman.
And Sherman. Okay, very good. John Wright.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I'm trying to get my video working.
That's okay. It's that little video camera thing that should be down the left. Somebody's named Endine?
It's Kathy Peters.
Kathy Peters. Okay. Comes up as Endine, but that's okay. Hi, Kathy.
That's my daughter.
Kathy Hewitt. Karen Hewitt, excuse me. Kristen Etsy.
Hi there.
Hi there. Steve Chamberlain.
Oh,
Okay, I'm gonna go. I have to go to the waiting room for just a second and let some more people in here. Okay, some more people just got in there. Hang on, everybody. Everybody should be muted. We're just going around here. Phil Deckert.
Here.
Very good. So Harold, who's ever coming up, it's Harold Schwank. Is it Harold Schwank?
Yes, it is Harold Schwank. Good evening.
Good evening. John Ricketson.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Who is Margaret's iPhone? Margaret's iPhone.
Peggy Cannonstein.
Oh,
My first, yes.
Hi, Peggy. Very good. Kevin Geiger here.
Yes. Hi, Kevin.
Okay, I'm going to mute you again. Hang on. And let's see. Oh, Erica Gephardt.
Yes, that's me.
That's very good. Hi, Erica.
Hi.
Craig McRae.
Hello.
Ann Reynolds,
Yes, hello.
Lydia Spitzer.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening. Cynthia, somebody who's just identified as Cynthia. Whoever Cynthia is should identify themselves. I'm going to go over to Dottie Deans. Dottie, are you there?
Hello?
Hi, okay. Cyrus. Who's
I'm here.
Cyrus? Who are you, Cyrus?
Cyrus Benoit, South Pomfret.
Excellent, thank you. Emily, I take it that's Emily Group?
It is.
Excellent. Back to Cynthia. Cynthia, you are unmuted. You can talk and tell us who you are. Cynthia.
Would that be Cynthia Hewitt?
I don't know. They should be able to hear. Hopefully you can hear me. We'll come back to you. And then I have somebody, looks like they're on the phone, calling in from 3205. Can you say who you are?
That's Ellen DeMurle.
Hi, Alan. Okay, very good. Okay, that looks like everybody except Cynthia. Cynthia is not.
And Kevin, this is Lindsay Hyde. You didn't identify me, but just wanted to let you know.
Okay, I'm looking for you there, Lindsay. Lindsay Hyde, yes, I see you. Okay, yes.
And John Moore is here too.
And oh, good. Hi, John. I remember admitting you there. Okay, Cynthia. I don't see who Cynthia is, but as long as Cynthia doesn't give me trouble, they can stay in the meeting. All right. So, Emily, I'm going to unmute you. I don't know if you want to show us your video or not, but if you can just kind of start us off here.
Well, I'm going to call this meeting to order. And as the chair of the Select Board of the Town of Pomfret, we find that due to the state of emergency declared by Governor Scott as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and pursuant to Addendum 6 to Executive Order 01-20 and Act 92, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. In accordance with Act 92, there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the temporary amendments to the open meeting law, I confirm that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, video, and other electronic means with additional access offered through those means. We are using Zoom for this remote meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to listen and, if desired, participate in this meeting by showing there's a hand symbol somewhere on your little box that you can do, or you can speak out to Kevin. Providing public notice of the instructions for the accessing this meeting, we previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information, including how to access the meeting using electronic means in our posted meeting agenda. They've also been posted on the website. We provide a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems. If anybody has a problem, please report the problem and continuing the meeting if necessary. In the event the public is unable to access this meeting, it will be continued to a time, place, and certain. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting that are not unanimous will be done by roll call vote. That being said, this is a hearing and we expect that there will be no votes. And I think you've already done a roll call. And so the next item on the agenda, and there's only this public hearing on the agenda, but we have to ask, is there any public comment unrelated to the agenda for this meeting? And if not, we will then go into the hearing. Any public comment from anyone?
So I've unmuted you all, so anybody can speak now.
And so I think the thing for us to do, this is now the hearing, and I would anticipate that, first of all, the select board is here to listen to the public. And so I would suggest that if anyone wished to speak regarding the proposed zoning bylaws, that they ask to do that at this time. And also, before the end of public comment is finished, I have 2 documents that I have been asked. Those particular people are not going to be at the meeting through Zoom, but they asked that I read their thoughts regarding the zoning regulation. So after the initial round of public comment, I would ask that Kevin would call on me, and I will read those 2 documents that I have.
Excellent. Thank you, Emily. I'm just going to make sure nobody else is popping on in here to the meeting. And again, you are all unmuted right now, so just remember that. And I'm hoping that you can see my screen, which has the ordinance on it. Scott, so can you see that, Scott?
No, you're not sharing anything right now.
Okay, so hang on one second. We'll get over to there then. Okay, so can you see the Pomfret ordinance now?
Yes.
Okay, that's just in case anybody has a specific thing and they want us to discuss a specific part of the ordinance, we can move to it and then we can all see that particular thing going on. All righty. So somebody just drew on there for some reason, and we're trying to, and our PowerPoint is loading for some reason. So we're going to get that out of there. Okay. All righty. So. All right. So let's open it up to comments. I'm going to leave you all unmuted for now. We'll see how that goes, since it may be a little difficult for you to raise your hand or anything. And hang on, somebody's just joining us here, so I'm going to have to let them in here. Okay. And I'm just going to have them identify themselves. And so whoever just came on as Iris Poley, can you identify yourself? Okay, Iris Poley, can you identify yourself? Good. Whoever joined and is identified, as Iris Poley. Okay. Don't know who that is, but we're going to go back here. I'm going to mute you all for a second. And you can unmute yourself. So now what I've done is you're all muted. And if you want to talk, just unmute yourself. And then we will go. And I'm just going to start at the top here because I have an alphabetical list. And I'm just going to go down everybody's name. And that way we don't have 3 people trying to say anything at the same time. So if you have a comment and I call your name, unmute, say your comment, just take a little bit. If we have plenty of time, we'll come back to you there. So Alan Graham, do you have any comments? And I'll unmute Alan. Alan, do you have any comments?
No comments.
Okay, excellent. Ann Reynolds.
No comment, except that I've lost all of you.
You can hear us, but you just can't see us.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, that's, since I can't see what you can't see, I have difficulty.
That's okay.
Something's probably minimized. Okay. Ben Brickner, any comments?
No, no comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Betsy, comments?
Which one?
Whoever just talked. So
Oh,
it's Betsy Seaver.
That would be me. Well, I really wanted to listen a little bit first.
Okay,
You have a comment, but if you could come back to me, that would be great.
sure.
Possible?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. 1 second here. Oh, somebody's trying to get in. Ellie is getting in. Okay, there we go. Nobody is in the waiting room, which is good. Try to keep the waiting room empty. Betsy Rhodes, do you have a comment?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Bill Emmons, coming to you.
I'm glad you asked. I lost you just for a second there, so I'm not sure if Betsy had any comments.
No, she did not. Not at this time.
Oh,
Betsy Seebeck, we're going to come back to.
oh, okay. Well, I did write a letter to the select board and from the planning commission. Did everyone get a chance to read that?
Well, they're all muted, so they can't answer you.
Does anybody want me to read it? Can you hear me?
Why don't you go ahead and read that? Yes, everybody can hear you.
Okay, I'll read it. I'll do my best in this low light here. It was dated today, May 4th, to the select board from the planning commission. To the select board, there have been several listserv messages and a Vermont Standard article with information about the draft zoning bylaw to be discussed at tonight's public hearing. The planning commission feels that some of this information has been incorrect or misleading. As you will soon decide how to proceed on the draft, we feel it is important to correct the record immediately. It has been argued that the 2016 town plan completely prohibits any allowance in a zoning bylaw for light industrial uses not associated with home-based businesses in the rural district. We disagree. The town plan does not define industrial uses, nor does it distinguish between industrial in general and light industrial in particular. The draft bylaw does provide these definitions and distinctions consistent with the regional plan. We believe this represents an improvement upon the town plan, as the draft bylaw carefully defines light industrial in a manner that could make these uses appropriate in the rural district under certain limited circumstances. As you know, Pomfret's zoning bylaw need not mirror the town plan in all respects. State law only requires conformance, which has been interpreted by the Environmental Division as requiring overall, quote, harmony, agreement, or compliance, end quote, and not duplication. The town's attorney has advised us accordingly. We believe the draft bylaw easily meets this standard. Moreover, the Vermont Standard article was incorrect in that, quote, the Planning Commission has moved to permit standalone light industrial uses in the rural district. This omits a critical distinction between permitted uses and conditional uses, requiring a zoning board of adjustment hearing and approval. The draft bylaw subjects standalone light industrial uses to a rigorous review process and numerous development standards, all intended to avoid adverse impacts, just as the town plan requires. The Planning Commission believes standalone light industrial uses are at least worth considering in the rural district under appropriate circumstances. An example could be future uses of the Prosper Valley School, should that facility be returned to the town. Indeed, standalone light industrial uses already exist in the rural district today. The Planning Commission does not wish to prohibit these uses entirely, but rather allow a narrow opportunity for an applicant to come before the ZBA and have their proposal reviewed under the draft bylaw development standards. Regarding process, a select board member was quoted in the standard as saying the Planning Commission, quote, has not offered an explanation, end quote. for changes made after its July 2019 hearing. This is not correct. Light industrial and other changes were explained in my February 17, 2020 letter to the Select Board, which was discussed at length at your February 19th meeting, at which the quoted Select Board member was present. Similarly, in a listserv message, a resident wrote that the light industrial change, quote, was neither formally conveyed to the public nor to the Select Board, end quote. This is also incorrect. This change was conveyed to the Select Board and published on the town website in November, ahead of the Select Board's January hearing. It was discussed at the January hearing and at multiple Select Board meetings thereafter. In the same listserv message, it was stated that a sound standard was deleted, quote, as one of the recommendations made by the Planning Commission, end quote. This is misleading. The commission recommended a 70 decibel standard, which was taken from the Woodstock zoning in its November 2019 draft to the Select Board. This standard was in fact strengthened after the July 2019 hearing in response to a public comment by this individual who sent the listserv message. Moreover, deletion of the sound standard was a unanimous decision of the Select Board as one of three options presented by the Planning Commission. The same listserv message also states that, quote, all sound limits have been removed from the regulations, day or night, every day, any sound, regardless of how loud is allowed, end quote. This too is misleading. The current bylaw does not contain a sound standard. The draft bylaw maintains the status quo in this respect. Moreover, current bylaw and the draft bylaw both prohibit nuisances. Some sounds at certain times and or certain volumes would be prohibited under the draft bylaw. And among the many things that the ZBA can require of an applicant during a conditional use review under the draft bylaw is a noise impact analysis. As you know, the draft bylaw has been in progress for several years. It was developed by the Planning Commission with advice from two professional planning firms and legal counsel. It also has been discussed at two prior hearings, many meetings of the Planning Commission, and several meetings of the Select Board. Following so much public process, the Planning Commission is surprised by the late attempt to delay adoption of the draft bylaw indefinitely. And we are dismayed that this has resulted in inaccurate and misleading comments being made to the detriment of both the interested public and the Select Board, who now must decide how to proceed. As you do so, we urge you to focus on the following questions. Was the process legal and legitimate? Thanks to Two Rivers and the town attorney's guidance, we know that all legal steps have been properly taken. Whether the process has been legitimate is for the Select Board to decide. We believe it has been. There will have been 3 public hearings and numerous public meetings as of tonight. This has afforded ample opportunity for public input and more opportunity than is required. Is the current draft better than the alternative? We believe so. A survey of residents' views on future development has been proposed, as have amendments to the town plan. These are excellent suggestions, and they can inform future revisions of the zoning bylaw. But if either is to be completed before action is taken on the current draft, the town must be prepared to live indefinitely with the current bylaw. This document is out of date and already has been the focus of dispute, resulting in substantial legal fees. We believe there is considerable risk in delaying the current bylaw replacement much longer. In another listserv message, the Select Board member stated that the life of the draft bylaw can be extended indefinitely. This is not accurate. Bylaw amendments not approved within a certain time are deemed disapproved under state law and must restart the adoption process. The current deadline is July 23rd, which might be extended a short while under the governor's COVID-19 emergency order. But The town attorney has advised against relying on this uncertain possibility and expressed his preference that the town meet the original deadline if possible. We believe the select board should assume the July 23rd deadline remains in effect, and that any further delay will require the adoption process to begin anew, leaving the current zoning bylaw in place for months or even years longer. Thank you for this opportunity to provide our feedback. We look forward to hearing additional input at tonight's meeting. For the Pomfret Planning Commission, William Emmons. Okay, you can mute me now.
Okay, Bill, I'm muting you. And I'm just gonna go down my list and then we'll go back to the top as needed. And so Bob Crean, I have you, or at least I have somebody that looks like you. Are you there, Bob?
I sure am. Good evening, everybody. Sorry I'm late, just checking in.
Do you have any comments on the bylaw?
I don't at this moment.
Okay, that's all right. If you think of later, we'll come back around.
Thank you very much.
So, Bob, so if you can mute yourself there, Bob, that'll be good. Try not to skip anybody here. Carol's iPad. Who's ever Carol's iPad?
Nelson, no comments now.
Okay, right. Charles. Charles, do you have any comment?
Chuck?
Chuck, yes, Chuck
Oh.
Anderson.
Yeah. No comment except to say to Billy and the Planning Commission, thank you for this tremendous amount of work that you've done. Not just on this, but over the years, you've put in so much time and so much effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Chuck. I'm going next to Craig McCrae.
Yes, I just have some questions about what types of businesses, for instance, specifically would be likely to be admitted under this bylaw. And also, are there any businesses now interested in approaching the town for this? Are there actually discussions going on about people opening light industrial businesses in town?
Okay, that's a good question. Of course, I'm moderating, so I can't answer. I don't even know the answer. So I'm going to send it over to Bill as the head of the Planning Commission. So Bill, if the Planning Commission has responses regarding the types of businesses and whether there's any kind of waiting in the wings there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. There's nothing in the wings. There are a few businesses in this town that are existing that are not home-based, and the kinds of businesses are basically the same as we already have. There's some small businesses that are a paint shop for cars. There's a number of people that have construction, and that's been ongoing for years. They have yards or whatever that are not basically where they live, and so it just opens up an opportunity. With the word industrial, that always tends to set off a few firecrackers, because anything that is commercial basically is industrious. Whether you're a barber or a doctor or a dentist or whatever, everybody has an opportunity to be industrious. And so the state chooses to use that word. So any business, I suppose, that is small enough, that doesn't make a noise, that doesn't bother the neighbors, that fits into the the needs of our community, provides opportunity for employees, and serves the community, I think would be probably allowed under certain circumstances. I don't think of any at this point. We don't really have too many, but I think it opens an opportunity. Does that answer your question?
Well, somewhat. It's just I've lived in a bunch of New England towns and I've seen these things come down, and sometimes they've been really destructive. But it sounds like what you're doing here is trying to clarify legal protections? Is this why we're doing this? Is this why this is happening?
To clarify legal protection?
Why does this have to happen now if you've already been doing it for 30 years? Why is this happening now?
Well, over time, the state mandates certain, planning requirements that towns basically need to incorporate. We originally had to designate an industrial zone, I believe it is, if I'm not mistaken, Kevin, in our town, or a district. And we hemmed and hawed on that as to, well, exactly where would that go? South Pomfret was about the only logical place, since that's got 3-phase power, but it's limited in many respects to any kind of industry, whether it be a woodworking shop or anything of that sort. So we did designate South Pomfret, although I don't think it's ever going to amount to anything. That's pretty much been industry down there in the past. When I was a boy, there was a garage, Mr. Moxley, and woodworking, carpentry headquarters for a fella. So the industry that we would allow in rural areas, I suppose, it may not happen. I don't know, but if it does, it's going to be carefully controlled by the zoning board of adjustment to make sure that it meets requirements. I don't foresee anything in the near future. So, but it's a good question, and we just want to be able to provide that opportunity. A lot of people have home businesses, and there's really not much difference between the fact that someone's living next to a business, or in a business. You have Chippers, which was a home business at first, and then it morphed into a business, and it had to have a permit for that, and that took a while to do. But if it's a business that's not a home business, it's going to have to get a permit with the conditions.
All right, thank you, Bill. So I'm going to mute you, and then just so everybody can see, because I don't know if you've driven around the bylaw, I'm just going to show a piece of the bylaw, not comment on that, but just so people know where it is. So in your, first off, the town has a few districts proposed. There you can see 4 of them there. The South Pomfret Village District, as you can think of the Tego area, the rural district, which is basically everywhere else in town, flood overlay district, which is the flood zone, and the ridge lines, which are the ridge lines. And in what Pomfret has, which is a little bit different than some bylaws, instead of listing everything you can do, it more lists things you can't do, and then has a general catch-all of what you can do. So you can see, if you're looking at my screen, which you hopefully are seeing, a list of things you can't do down in the South Pomfret area. And then there's some things that just get a permit. And then there's some things that go through a conditional use process, which is a whole heavier duty review of standards. And so I'm just going to take you. So you see just here, this is the catch-all provision. Any use that's not exempt, permitted, or prohibited is a conditional use. So you can see all sorts of things could fit in there, except the things that are prohibited. And so, for example, a outdoor shooting range, or a kennel, or heavy industrial, and those have definitions in the back. So I'm going to go back to look at everybody here, hopefully. Hang on a second. And I'm going to come down to Cynthia Hewitt. I'm going to unmute you. Cynthia, do you have any comments?
I'm the secretary.
Ah, very good. Dottie Deans.
One question I have, who is the lawyer for the town?
Okay, that's a good question. Does somebody, let's see.
Stitchell and Page represents the town
Okay.
And where are they located?
in Burlington. Stitchell, Page, and Fletcher.
Do you have another question, Dottie?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. I'm going to mute you again. I'm coming to, hang on, I'm going to scooch down here. Cyrus, I'm going to unmute you, and then I'm coming to Ellie next. Cyrus, do you have any comments or questions?
No comment right now.
Excellent. And Ellie, I'm coming to you next. Ellie?
Hi. When I first moved to South Pomfret, there was a woodworking shop next to my house. And when that buzzsaw was going, it was quite loud. It was in the old schoolhouse. But that's the only industry that was concerning of me at the time.
Okay, thank you, Ellie. And I'm going to come to Emily and Indine next, which I know is not really Indine, but that's what it shows up as.
I have no comment. I'm Kathy Peters, who's on Dean.
Okay. Emily, I'm trying to unmute you, but I can't do it for some reason. Can you unmute? There you go.
I unmuted myself. I'm here to listen as a select board member. I really have no comment. I am grateful that there are as many participants as there are. It's very heartening.
Thank you. Yes, we have 40 people on. I'm going to come to Harold Schwank next.
Yes, just a short comment. I'd like to thank Billy for the letter that he circulated today. I found it did help clarify some points. I found that helpful. And I'd like to applaud the work done by the entire Planning Commission over some time now in multiple hearings in a very difficult area. So thanks for your efforts on behalf of the town.
Thank you, Harold. Next, I'm coming to iBook G4, which I believe, if I remember right, is Jerry Fields. And Jerry, it looks like you got to unmute yourself because I'm trying and not able to.
No comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. And then who's ever simply identified as iPad, I forget who that was.
You got camera on us now.
That's Alan Blackmer.
Oh, Alan Blackmer. Okay, so Alan Blackmer.
Yes, thank you, Kevin. I also want to thank the Planning Commission for all the work that they have done. And speaking on behalf of the Zoning Board of Adjustment, I believe that their work is going to give us a lot more specific material to work with and should help us in making decisions. I also wanted to say that I did meet with the select board a couple of months ago, and I expressed to them my views that I felt that the ZBA should have more authority written into the document than is presently there. And I also feel that there should be a mechanism for enforcement of ZBA decisions. There was a mechanism for enforcement in the old bylaws that go back to 1976, but there is nothing written into the present ones. So I don't really want to discuss those matters. I just wanted to say that I have met with them and we talked at some length about those two items. So thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. And I'm going to go to Jane and then to John Moore after that, and then to John Peters. So coming up here, hang on. Drive around here a little bit. Oh, I've jumped past some people. Oh goodness, hang on one second. So coming to Jane, I'm going to unmute you. Jane? Looks like you'll have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I have no comment, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. And John Moore. John, can you hear me?
I guess. I'm going to yield to the people that aren't on the planning commission. Billy gave quite a long presentation there, so we'd like to hear from the public, I think. I may have some comments later.
Wonderful. Thank you. John Peters.
I just want to thank Bill Emmons and John Moore for putting all of this work in. I do want to, at some point, share my reasoning for the sound provision part. And I don't know, maybe I should do that later after everybody's got their first chance to speak, but.
Sure. I'll just trying to write little notes about people coming back to people. All right. I'll come up to John Wright and then John Ricketson. So John Wright.
No specific comments at the moment. I'm just trying to sort out what is reality after confusing listserv conversations.
Okay.
So thank you.
And then John Ricketson.
Oops.
That's okay. We both did it at the same time there.
We double muted. Very brief comment. Just, in the short number of years that I've lived in Pomfret, I haven't seen this much discussion, and it may be just because I'm home and the COVID thing and I'm paying more attention, but to me, that's just kind of a vote for maybe it needs a little more discussion, a little more time. I don't know what the plan is for when this would be voted on, but I would hope there'd be a little more time personally for me to absorb it, because I'm still catching up from all the talk on the listserv. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And as we loop around, I'm going to ask, or especially at the end, I'm going to ask Emily to just kind of give everybody a going forward a little playbook, what might happen and how might that happen. So hopefully that'll answer your question then. So now I'm moving on to Karen Hewitt, Osno. Karen.
I have no public comment.
Thank you. Kristen Campbell Etsy.
And no comment.
All right. Laura Kent and Sherman.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I have a comment on process.
Okay.
In this discussion on this document, there has been talk about future versions. This is a living document. We can change, and improve it as we go along. My comment is, given the history and track record in Pomfret, that could be another 40 years before it gets changed. And so I think, given the reality, instead of hurrying to do and approve a really good document, it might make sense to wait another 6 months and make it a better document in terms of process, which would also perhaps get us beyond the COVID-19 Zoom meetings, where we could actually gather together as a community and talk about this and address people's concerns in a more substantive manner. But when I hear it's a living document, the last zoning regulations were barely alive, it seemed to me. So I think we should do better rather than just say we're going to revise it in the next year to make it better. Okay. That's my comment.
All right. Thank you. Coming up, going to go to Lindsay Hyde.
No comment. Thank you.
Okay. And then who's ever identified as Iris Poley. Can you identify yourself too? Iris Poley. They may not. Okay. Gonna mute you. Somebody's waiting. I have to let them in here. Marie is coming into the meeting, Marie Cross. So 1 second. Just going down the list here. So if you can see my screen, you can see the list, so you can see how you're coming up. So Lydia Spitzer is coming up next, and then Margaret. So Lydia.
I have up again. I have no comment at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Margaret Siphon.
Yes, hi, this is Margaret, also known as Peggy.
Peggy, yes.
Yes, hi. I am interested in knowing a little more about the sound decibels and the light restrictions, but later. Otherwise, I have no comments other than thanks to all of the work that has been done already. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to leave the meeting. So there we are. I hope to read and hear more about all of this, but thanks everybody.
Thank you, Peggy. And hopefully, just so I'm sure somebody's taking notes for the Planning Commission and for the Select Board, if they can follow up, especially around that sound and light issue to Peggy, so you could reference the particular parts of the bylaw or that type of thing. I'm sure would help. Marie Cross coming up.
Okay.
So we can hear you, Marie.
Hi, how are you? I
Hi.
just joined in, so I'm just joining in to hear what's going on.
Okay. So no comments, that's okay.
No comments.
Okay. Good. And gonna go down and get to the next person here. Pam Pickett and then Phil Deckard are coming up. Pam, you just
Hi.
unmute
Hi.
yourself. Yes, there.
Yep.
there.
This is Pam Pickett. I too appreciate all the work that's been done on revamping the zoning regulations. And I just want to express, I'm concerned about the elimination of the noise standard. While I appreciate there's verbiage included about dangerous or noxious conditions, I believe that's really subjective. And I'd like the select board to reconsider having the measurable decibel limit that the planning board had included originally in there.
Thank you. That was a nice specific comment. Phil Deckard. I've unmuted you. Oh,
Do you hear me?
I can hear you, Phil. Yes.
Okay. I was struck by the word industrial, and it has a connotation for those of us that grew up near the city of smokestacks and lots of noise. And so I think it would be better not to use that as a term, because if you took the school and put a business in there sewing face masks for something, it really would have very little impact, as opposed to making wood stoves or iron wood stoves. So I think it would be better to try to figure out another word for that, and then rely on performance standards such as noise and traffic and things to control it. The other thing, I went through, I made lots of little notes, which I'll pass on to the Planning Commission, or the Select Board. But I'm not going to go through that. The other thought I have is, having observed here and in other towns I've worked for, that I think it would be good to try to adopt this fairly quickly and get it in use, and then either in like in a year and a half or 2 years or less, come back, and at that point the town would have had time to see if there were issues that came up in terms of using it, and there would be also more time to deal with some of the more difficult issues, and I can't remember what it was, but It it and it will take discipline to actually do it, but if people know that it's going to be, revisited in a year or so, then hopefully they'll focus on it and get it done. But I'm fearful that if it gets dropped now, that poor Karen's gonna go there without a workable zoning ordinance for another year or 2 or 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. And just again, for people's clarity, not being, supportive or against, I'm just going to take people to just show folks. So industrial gets used, and then that says includes light industrial and heavy industrial, and light industrial has a definition and heavy industrial has a definition in the back of the bylaw. And again, going back to the South Pomfret zone, heavy industrial is talked about there. And again, your bylaw, the draft bylaw, kind of says these things can't happen. And unless it says they can't happen, then they kind of can happen. That's your approach. So just a note, look to the definitions and stuff. And it sounds like that noise issue is an issue on several people's minds. So I'm going to go to Scott Woodward. Do you want to say anything, or?
I do. Thanks, Kevin. Just I don't want to get into all the specifics that were in the letter, but I just want to say off the top that I too appreciate the work of the Planning Commission. Many may know that I served on the Planning Commission for several years, and I actually worked on the zoning regulations with many of the same people who worked on the zoning regulations, including Phil back in the 2013, 2012 period. So that effort to get the zoning regs up to speed. But I definitely appreciate, and none of anything I've said so far is to take away from the work that's been done. This is a healthy discussion, so I'm glad it's happening. I do want to say right off the top that we do actually have time if we want to create a runway for ourselves to think about this more and give ourselves more time. We have that. And it's very clear that the legislature, because of COVID-19, provided the ability for us to basically extend out the period to have hearings, to collect public input, to adopt the zoning regulations for as long as we see fit. Right now, the zoning regs we're talking about are actually already in effect. The ZBA is already applying these zoning regulations to any permit, to applications that come in. So it's not so much a question of adopting or not. They're already in effect. And the other thing that's important, I think, for folks to keep in mind is that while the law does not command perfect conformance with the town plan, our town plan is a little bit unique in the language it uses. And that was intentional back when the town plan was drafted. We had, as Kevin may recall, and some of the planning commission members may recall, we had a lot of dialogue about industrial uses. And that's how we got to where we are today in the town plan. So there's still an open question to what degree the town plan and the zoning regs need to be in conformance with each other. And just to point out, initially when the zoning regs were first put out last summer, they actually prohibited industrial uses throughout the town. So this is actually the first hearing tonight where anybody's had an opportunity to really talk about, because it wasn't that July hearing was the opening hearing that it was the first time any of those changes that occurred after the July version of the zoning regs. That was the first hearing where this occurred. So we're just now having the conversation. And lastly, I want to speak to the sound provision. And I just want to say for the record, for everybody to know, that I did vote to remove, among with my fellow board members, I did vote to strip out the quantitative sound provision. But my reasoning for that was that we had made a promise with Purple Crown in a settlement discussion that we would do our best. We would consider making the sound provision in that settlement a townwide standard. And that was a quantitative standard that was vetted legally and by engineers. And unfortunately, it kind of got twisted up, but we ended up with no sound provision because I think there was some discomfort with the sound provision that was put in place with Purple Crown. But what I want to say about that is others may disagree, but we in my view, made a gentleman's promise that we would adopt that sound provision as the townwide standard. And it's a good standard, and I hope that we take that up again. So those are my comments.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Steve Chamberlain, I think, is my next person.
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, thank you. And then I have some phone numbers ending in 1121. I'm going to unmute you. So who's ever on the phone ending in 1121.
Yeah, this is Bob O'Donnell. I'm a former resident.
Oh, hi, Bob.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Former member of the Planning Commission. Just listening in, I do want to indicate great thanks to the Planning Commission. They put a tremendous amount of work and effort into the new ordinance, and I hope the selectmen do adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'm going to go to, hang on, Bob, I'm just going to make sure you're muted again here. Yep. And I'm going to go to the next phone, which is ends in 3205.
Hi, that's me. I'm Ellen DeMurle.
Hey, Ellen.
And I do have some comments I'd like to make.
Okay, go ahead.
First, I'd like to urge people to look at the old zoning that dates back to the 1970s to see how spare it is before advocating on holding off on adopting these proposed rules. At this time, Pomfret truly has no provisions to guide new development so that it is in keeping with the patterns and characteristics of the neighborhood and the community. And yet that is the purpose of zoning, to guide the development so that the investment we put into our homes and our property here is safe from ruin by inappropriate uses on the land next door or nearby. If you read the old zoning, you will note the lack of the following language and concepts: traffic and parking, lighting, visual impact, neighborhood characteristics, building height, screening, drainage, erosion and stormwater runoff, riparian buffers, natural resources, and other concepts. And yet I believe all those considerations are vital in evaluating and guiding new development in town. Over the next year or so, the town can test drive the new zoning and gain experience that will be valuable in determining which provisions might need revision and how it might be best accomplished. There is plenty of time to have that community input, but the zoning needs to be brought into the 21st century first. The argument that the new bylaw isn't perfect is disingenuous and misguided. Updated zoning is desperately needed and has been for decades. Pomfret needs bylaws that address today's residential and commercial building techniques, character, and the pressure to develop. I applaud the diligent, thoughtful, and hard work of the Planning Commission, and I urge the Select Board to adopt these bylaws. And that takes care of it for me.
Thank you, Alan. And now I'm going to come to who's ever on the phone ending in 4689.
It's Orson St. John, Kevin. I finally got connected. And I'd just like to compliment what Billy said about the businesses. We are and really want to promote home-based businesses, small entities, nothing too large. I would suggest that people, if they think about the business environment in town, is to actually look at the standards in 4142 of the draft bylaw. And if you can visualize whether it's a commercial entity or some kind of a light industrial entity wanting to come into town, look at those standards and try to apply those to that which you think might be the entity that's going to come to town. And I think you'll see that the CBA has the necessary tools to govern so that it's not one of those unattractive commercial developments that you might see in a major commercial area like downtown Boston and those places. So we're extremely interested in preserving the rural character and the likes of that in Pomfret, and that's behind our efforts to have some good guidelines. And Phil, thanks to you, many of them were from your original work for the Planning Commission, and we deeply appreciate that. And that's it, Kevin, for the moment.
Thank you, Orson. And just again, if you're seeing my screen back there, I have gone over. Hopefully, Scott, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay. Oh, well, if you're right, Orson's on the phone. He can't see. You have to be on the computer. But I've just pulled up just so people can see, and so you can go back in later. And I do realize that people don't just read zoning left and right like I do. So it's kind of a mystery, a murder mystery novel in some ways. So you have to know the right part to look at. And so just so people can refer to that later, there are both general standards, as you can see in part 4.1 here, and that applies to all development. And so it goes over heights and wetlands and riparian buffers and you name it, grading lots, hazardous materials, signs, parking. And then there are what he talked about in 4.2. There are the conditional use standards, and those apply to the things that would go through the conditional use process. So there's some permitted uses, and then there's conditional uses. It's then another set of standards applies there as well. And just so people can go see those. And again, that's kind of pages 19, 20, 21, 22 in the draft bylaw, if you want to flip ahead. I think that I have been through everybody on the list.
No.
Oh, no, good. So who's that? Who just spoke?
Ann Reynolds.
Ann Reynolds. Oh, I'm sorry, Ann.
I found you again. That was
There.
very clever of me.
Oh, very good. Okay, so Ann.
My technology lessons are paying off. I just wanted to have a little shout out to thank Ben Bruckner, who was so helpful to us on the Planning Commission. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Anything else, Ann?
No, that's it.
Okay, very good. Now I do think I've gone through everybody once. I'm just going to zing down the list here, and I think I've got everybody. So I'm going to come back. I know some people said they might want to talk some more. So I'm going to come back to John Peters, because he said he might want to talk about sound some, and then I'm going to come back to Betsy Seebeck.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a few things about my reasoning for removing the sound provision. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to have a sound provision in there similar to what was in there. Although I don't think we've had a lot of issues in town with sound. And by having one, it then makes the town liable to defend any suits. So there is the potential for it to cost the town a significant amount of money. Secondly, under the provision that was in there, which would have been the same as artistry, you notice that it's 70 decibels at the property line during the day. At the nighttime, especially in the rural areas, and maybe because we're all inside, it doesn't matter, but it actually potentially allowed for, at least at the source or at the property line, the potential for more sound at night, because the limiting factor in there was measured at the residents making the complaint. So you could have a very rural area and have very loud sounds at somebody's property line, and Maybe I'm out camping or my neighbor's out camping and I'm making a bunch of noise, or they are. But theoretically, there'd be nothing they could do about it as long as at their residence it's under those levels. So I definitely think more time is needed to assess that properly. I think it's a very tricky part of the ordinance, which is why I suggested and voted to remove it for now, because currently we don't have one and haven't had numerous issues. I'm certainly open to having one in there as a member of the select board and as a member of the community. But I do think it's imperative that we get something adopted quickly, or well, as quickly as possible, while answering the questions and doing our due diligence to make sure that they are as close to what we want as possible. But we haven't had anything updated for years and years. So I feel it's important. And yet, you know, there is we haven't done anything with them for 35, 40 years, so we could adopt them and not, but that's up to us and the town to hold each other accountable and make sure that we stay on top of them. I think the more often they get updated, the easier it's going to be as well. And then as far as the light industrial, I think it really what it does is legitimizes some of the businesses that have been in town for years, as I think Bill Evans or maybe somebody else alluded to in one of the things going around today, as well as make an opportunity for people that live here that want to have a viable source of income. And it really does leave the decision making up to the zoning board of adjustment as to whether it can happen or not. It's not just a simple sign off, yeah, you're all set, you've met the criteria. There would be a lengthy discussion and approval process to make sure what was being done fit into our town. I think that certainly is vital. Nobody wants, you know, a 50,000 square foot steel structure where people are making things inside. But if it can fit into our surroundings and made to look like it belongs, then why shouldn't somebody be able to do that, providing they're not contaminating the air, soils, you know, noises, traffic. Obviously there's some criteria that have to be met, but that's all that I have right now.
Thank you, John. And I'm going to go over to Betsy Seebeck. So Betsy, I've unmuted you there.
Thank you. Okay. I wanted to say thank you not only to the Planning Commission, but to every person who serves on a board and works for the town, because I think it's understood, but not often openly appreciated how much time people who serve on all the boards put into this town. And that includes you, Kevin, who are running a really good meeting here tonight. The Zoom meetings with a large number of participants can get unwieldy pretty fast. And I don't think this one is. I still think an in-person meeting is preferable, but we don't have that option right now. And I think that you've been wonderful tonight. And people like Ben, who helps different boards with information that and expertise that he has. So I think everybody, and that includes Betsy Rhodes on the library board and all the boards in town, everybody who serves the town works hard, and I appreciate it. I have kind of two different subjects that I want to touch on, and they're really different. I'd like to do them separately, but I'm not sure I'm going to be able to. So I'll just go right into it. I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I came up with two possible solutions to try to make everybody feel comfortable with how this goes forward from tonight on. And I think it's a good idea, as it's been suggested, that if the town can get some breathing room and create some space, especially about the changes that seem to be concerning people, and that is noise, and it is also light light standalone industrial conditional use permits townwide. So I have two suggestions that might satisfy people in the town government and the town. So first, take a vote now, and I'm going to suggest that the ordinance that was put forward to the town in July that did not have standalone light industrial conditional use, I'm reading this now, in the rural district and did have a noise standard, that the select board vote on that. And then the changes can be discussed by the town at meetings in the future, preferably when in-person meetings can occur. And any changes to the ordinance could be made at that point. So that's one possibility. Or secondly, the select board votes now on the document as it exists right now with the amendments in place. But the select board also creates a moratorium on any light industrial permits until such time that the town can fully debate in person both the concept of standalone light industrial use townwide and the adoption of a useful noise ordinance or sound standards. And hopefully in that interim time, a townwide survey could happen so that it would be really better understood how the town feels about all these issues. So I just wanted to put that forward. My understanding is there are no longer any deadlines involved, so waiting causes no legal problems. And as we go forward, right now, we are not using the 1972 document, we're using this current document. So it's not as if we've got something horribly inadequate in place. And I do think that the document as it was written originally is basically a very good document. It's a fine document. And I think most people who are aware of what it contains believe that as well. So I'd really ideally like to just put that out and see how people feel about it, but I don't know how long this meeting is going to go on, and I do have some other points that I wanted to make. One is that the letter that Billy read, I thought was a good letter. I think there are.
Hey Betsy, you're shuffling a lot of papers around.
Oh, sorry.
Whatever's like by your hands, the mic is really picking up.
Oh, because they're right on top of the mic. Sorry.
Aha.
Okay, this will be better. Billy's letter for the Planning Commission was a good one. I think it had some good points that it made. I do have some concerns and about how rigorous a review and how strict the standards can be without noise standards in place or a noise ordinance. A noise ordinance is another way of doing it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what exactly you mean, Billy, by certain limited circumstances, because I don't know how in the context of standalone in light industrial, those are limited. I also think that the reference to noise impact analysis is a little concerning because that's something that the ZBA can, if it wants to, ask for, which means it is not applied consistently. And I think without noise standards, a noise impact analysis is really, it has no basis. In other words, so you have the noise impact analysis and then what? There's no standard that says this is okay and this is not. So it's really, it doesn't seem to make much sense. And then also the reference to the nuisance law is another, I think that's a really problematic way to control sound. And Kevin, if you could get to that, it's the last in the list of prohibited uses in both the village and the rural districts, wherever that is on your screen, I don't know.
The prohibited uses?
Yeah, there's a list of prohibited uses
Yeah.
in both districts.
Yeah.
And it's the last one, and it talks about noxious, blah, blah, blah. At any rate, it's a very difficult standard to prove. It puts a burden on the town. There was just, as Scott referred to, a legal problem with the use of that standard because it is tough. So I have concern about basing sound restrictions on either one of those two things, and that seems to be what's left in the document. So I also want to say that, and I'll make this is the last thing I'll say, but Billy, you referred to you talked to two planners. The Planning Commission has worked with two planners. And I used to some years ago, go to Planning Commission meetings, and I spent 2 or 3 years doing that. And I was around when they were talking about the first iteration of the ordinance. And the planner that was involved then is named Brandy Saxton. And she is a professional. She's now the planner for Addison County. And she, I remember when she was involved, she did create a document for the town that is not being used this time, but that's fine. The one that is written is okay. And I called her because I had talked to her in those years. And she was very kind, and I talked to her briefly because I didn't want to take a lot of her time. And I had asked her a question back then. And this is with all due respect to the Planning Commission's understandable desire to allow people to do some things in town that maybe are a little different from residential. But the question I asked her about back then was, is it usual for a town to have create townwide industrial use? And she said then, and she said again today, that it's not common for a town to create townwide industrial use. And then I asked her about the nuisance standard that says, and I'll just read it quickly, it's only a few lines: uses that create dangerous, injurious, or noxious conditions that adversely affect the reasonable use of adjoining or nearby properties, or that constitute a public nuisance, including but not limited to slaughterhouse, rendering plant, fertilizer plant, and hazard material chemical storage facility. Her comment about that was, she said, the language used in that paragraph is old language. It is neither common nor is it recommended. It's subjective and is interpreted differently over time. So I don't know where that goes from here, but I think that's important to take into account because this woman's a professional. She's very good. I think everybody liked her on the Planning Commission. And it is my concern when that paragraph is turned to as a way to control sound, which the town was really not able to do in this recent problem that they had. That's a concern I wanted to share as well. And then she also said that most towns have sound standards, but I think, and I didn't ask this right out, but I think she actually prefers a noise ordinance. And I don't know enough about noise ordinances to be able to say anything about that, but I did want to pass that along at all. And Phil made some very good points, and he says that while not all industrial is noisy, some is. So I think we really have to think about that in town, and before we put forth a document that doesn't provide for that. And what I really wanted to do was present my two ideas of a way to go forward, because I know the select board would like to vote. And I thought those two possibilities, and I can share them again with select board members or however anybody might want to know more about it. But those two possibilities gives everybody a little bit of what they want, which is a good way to go forward. So that's all.
So Betsy, can you just circle back and briefly recap those two avenues that you just laid out?
I can. Hold on. The first would be to take a vote now that the ordinances that were put forward to the town in July that did not have standalone industrial conditional use in them and did have a sound standard, those could be voted on. And then the changes to townwide light industrial and the deletion of a sound standard can be discussed by the town at meetings in the future, preferably when in-person meetings can occur. And then any changes to the ordinance can be made at that point. So that's number one. The second would be that the select board votes now on the document with the amendments in place, but that they also create a moratorium on any light industrial permits until such time that the town can carefully debate in person both the concept of standalone light industrial use townwide and the adoption of a useful noise ordinance or sound standard. That's
okay.
Oh, and then a survey in the interim.
All right. Thank you.
Oh, can I just say one more thing? The idea of test driving and the idea of just, pass it and let's see how it works. My concern about that is what happens to the uses that are permitted that don't work and that we're stuck with. So that's all.
Okay, thank you. So now I'm just going to kind of frame the meeting a little bit, and I'm happy to go a little longer. It's 8:25, so we've been at it about an hour and a half-ish. But there have been some issues raised, just to recap from my end, and I'm sure for those of you taking notes, that seem to center around industrial and noise would be the two main things that I'm hearing. Hearings, this is a hearing, it's not a meeting of the select board nor of the planning commission. And so hearings purpose is to hear. It's not a meeting, and it's not a place where one can decide anything because it's a hearing. And to do the deciding part, you go into a meeting and talk about that. And so I don't know whether they are, it's balls in the select board's court, if they want to have another meeting and a discussion and stuff, and that's Zoomable. We could certainly have a little more conversation now, but I'm going to turn it over to Emily and have Emily as chair of the meeting kind of decide what we should do going forward right now, and then also give everybody who's on the Zoom call here still a description of the process that the select board is likely to take between now and whenever action is coming up. So Emily, can you Zoom on here? And I will make sure that you can talk. I think you can just unmute yourself. Yes, good. I've unmuted you, or you can unmute yourself, Emily. Yeah, there you go.
Okay, before I say anything more, I have two letters here, emails.
Okay, yep.
I was asked to read
yes,
this evening. One is from Bob Harrington. I am not in favor of the proposed revised zoning ordinance. Furthermore, I would recommend the select board take action and vote to get rid of zoning completely and not consider for a 5-year period. We have a town plan and Act 250 for adequate review of larger projects to include solar. Pomfret needs to focus on its people and not just on its beauty. Over the last 50 years, it has become much less attractive to younger permanent residents and much more attractive to the retirees that can afford it and the wealthier people who have more time on their hands to write regulations. As a result, we don't even have enough permanent folks to run our own school. In essence, the slippery slope of zoning regulations has sucked the lifeblood out of our community. The average person wants freedom, not regulations. They will seek a home where other people aren't telling them what to do all the time, where to build, what to build, how to build, when they can make noise and when they can't, when they can start up their chainsaw, etc., etc. Where does it end? Let's rename Pomfret, call it Sleepy Hills. Here's what I feel is too excessive and has gotten more strict in favor of less development for more permanent average residents over the years. 65 feet from the road should be 50 feet. 12% grade max should be 16% or state standards. 750 feet from tops of hills in ridgeline should be 250 feet as it started down when I was on the Planning Commission and made the maps, which I now regret. Eliminate the review of structures and roads in the ridgeline. Allow light industry and commercial anywhere in town as a conditional use with no restricted lot size. These are a few examples of how zoning will go too far and create a Quechee Lake suburb of Pomfret. I submit my thoughts as a sixth-generation Pomfreter who loves this town as much as anybody, not just for its beauty and serenity, but for its people. I've been fortunate enough to live here and raise two families, serve in numerous community roles over the years, and enjoy the peace and tranquility of our lands and people. Respectfully submitted, Bob Harrington. The other one was from Doug Tuttle, and Doug has written me twice now. And this is his last letter, and you probably have all read it on the listserv, but I will read the last two paragraphs. Vermont is in need of change. We can no longer depend on our major centers such as Hartford, Rutland, Burlington, etc., to provide all the jobs. We encourage small businesses and try to promote them across the state. We in Pomfret cannot stay a bed and breakfast communities who workers have to travel out of town, in a lot of cases out of state to work. These changes in the latest zoning go a long ways to both protecting what already exists and seeing to it that others may purchase these businesses that are already here and maintain them without fear over the burdensome zoning regulations. In Pomfret, we have some very looked up to and respected small companies: Trafalgar, David Moore, Chippers, Keith Chase, Miller Hewitt, Dale Harrington, Keith Sawyer, Frank Perron, Bob Harrington, and a long list of others that operate or have operated within our town. They are all good people, good neighbors, and contribute greatly to our town in many ways. These are the folks that these changes are addressing. Please support them and all other landscapers, builders, gardeners that already exist in our town. Though no document will ever be perfect for all situations, we must remember that this is a fluid document that will continue to be looked at for years to come. And as generations change, like the changes in my lifetime here, so will zoning. The Planning Commission has worked on these issues tirelessly over at least 15 years and longer. When I was on the Planning Commission way back when, we were tackling these issues. It is time to make these changes, way past time in my opinion. Everyone understands I detest zoning completely, as I see it as a rich man's dreams and a poor man's worst nightmare. But I appreciate all the time and effort that has gone into this and support it 100%. I will not be on Zoom nor on any other podcast, but I do want this letter entered into the official meeting minutes and read into the record. Thank you all, Doug Tuttle. And for myself, before I close off the meeting, I do have one comment. And that is that Doug mentioned Trafalgar Square, and I have no problem with Trafalgar Square. They're my neighbor, and what they do doesn't bother me at all. And so please do not misconstrue these comments. Trafalgar Square started out with as a home business with 2 employees. And at one point, Trafalgar Square had approximately 40 employees and 7 or 8 tractor trailer a day delivering goods there for both their book publishing and distribution business. They came in under a home business, but you cannot say that they didn't change the activity on the road and the services that were required. They have since downsized, but they still have 5 or 6 trailers go in there a day. And the thing that has bothered me in the past with our zoning ordinance is that there was no opportunity for any business at all unless it was home-based. So what has happened in Pomfret over the years, and I could give you many examples, but I will not, is that businesses have kind of slithered in under the carpet with no decision-making process or any scrutiny from the Zoning Board of Adjustment or anyone else. We kind of slither in under an agricultural enterprise or a forestry enterprise or this or that or the other thing. And really, and I've been saying this for more than 20 years, it's nothing new in my repertoire of comments. It's really time to take a look at some light, soft industries that could bring young people into town so they could earn a living that wouldn't hurt the environment and wouldn't hurt the peace and quiet that we all enjoy and cherish, but that could give a place for employment so that people didn't have to drive to Lebanon or to Woodstock or somewhere else to work. And I do think that this light industrial activity could give us an opportunity to at least have some kind of discussion with these people that are going to come into town for these various entities, rather than have them slither in under the rug in a loophole. And for that, I will now close the meeting.
So Emily, just
Yes.
one sec. I do see John Harrington has joined us. I think it's John Harrington.
Oh, okay.
And I hope he wasn't like out in the waiting room and I didn't see them for a while. So John, can you hear us? And would you like to say anything? Strangely, I don't see your mic to mute or unmute you, which I'm not sure if that means that you don't have a.
Yeah, it means he doesn't have a mic.
Yeah, okay. So you may be trying to talk to us, but we can't hear you. Hopefully you can hear us. Since I can't get anything from you, can you send us a chat? Can you send me an email? There may be a couple other ways we can try to bring you in if need be, but of course you may not want to comment right now. So lacking.
Kevin, it looks like his audio just connected, but now he is muted.
Oh, okay, good. Good.
I was about to say he just came on.
Good. All righty, hang on then. That's often how I am. So John, can you hear us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, you can. Yes, we can. Okay, very good. Were you stuck in the waiting room for a while, or did you just join us? Oh, hang on.
And on the meeting.
Oh, okay, can you say that again, John?
I just got the kids to bed and I thought I'd listen in on the meeting.
Okay, thank you. So you may have just caught, Emily was reading a letter your dad wrote near the end there. Just to briefly recap the meeting.
I can hear you.
Yes. You can hear us. Okay, very good. Were you stuck in the waiting room for a while, or did you just join us? Oh, so you've got two things going, it sounds like. You may have.
Hey, John.
Say it again, John.
I just put the kids to bed and I thought I'd listen in on the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
If you're watching us on YouTube, John, you should stop that. There you go.
Your dad wrote near the end there. Just
Yeah.
briefly recap the meeting.
I can hear you.
Yes, you can hear. Yes, you can hear us. Okay, very good.
There's a delay though. Something's going on.
Hey, John, kill your web browser for YouTube. There.
Okay, so John has muted himself. I can't unmute him right now.
Yeah, he just needs to kill his.
Yeah, if you have two things running at the same time, you'll get into that loop type sound. And so if you ever call a radio station, you don't want to turn your radio down before you call them.
I think I'm all set now. I apologize.
Yes, that's good. That's good. Dave.
I was wondering what's going on.
So just to recap, John, and then I'll look for any comments from you. The industrial issue and noise issues kind of were the biggies, I would say, being brought up. We were just about to close, but any comments you have or questions are welcome.
I agree with what Emily, I jumped in right when Emily was talking. I didn't hear, I heard what Doug wrote and what Emily was saying. I'm in agreement that we need to find some place for industrial use in Pomfret. I think businesses are the fabric of the town, and I think we need to support that. I do understand folks' concerns about, you know, noise and all the other things that go along with industrial use, but I do think that there should be a place for it somehow in the zoning. And I apologize, I'm coming into all this late, and I'm just more curious and want to hear what folks have to say more than anything, I guess, at this point. But I did kind of cruise through the draft zoning regs today, but I don't see anything in there that really, right now, jumps out at me.
Okay.
Maybe once discussion happens, something will. I don't know.
Very good. So Emily's just going to close this out, and she is going to kind of tell everybody the path forward for the select board, or the potential paths forward. Okay, Emily. So it's all yours.
Thank you for letting me talk.
Sure.
Do you still have me muted, Kevin?
No, you're live.
Okay, it's a good thing I didn't say something inappropriate then, wasn't it? I wouldn't have done that. Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming to the meeting this evening. This turnout was great, and we appreciate all of your comments. The path forward for the select board will be discussed at Wednesday night's select board meeting, also by Zoom. It is not anticipated, at least for me, that we are going to necessarily discuss all of the comments in detail, but we will determine whether there will be another hearing, what our time constraints are, if there are any. And I got a little bit different opinion about certain things from a VLCT lawyer today than what came on Friday, or a little bit of a different twist when I asked a different question. And we will determine what the select board is going to take for a path forward at our meeting, or we'll at least discuss it. We may not make a decision on Wednesday, but I do think that personally, it is my thought that one way or another, we need to determine what our path forward will be and make a decision, and then follow that path. And I do not know myself what that will be, but that is a decision the board will have to make. And I want to thank Kevin for running the show. I think you did a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that, and taking the time to do that on your own time. And I guess I would look to a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
I need a second.
Second.
And unless the vote to end the meeting is unanimous, I have to do a roll call vote. So let's just say, is anyone not in favor of ending the meeting? Then I assume that it will be a unanimous vote. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting at this time?
Aye.
Aye. And none are opposed? Correct? And the meeting is over, and we thank you all.
Thank you all.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
And for the record, we had 40 people, including myself, attending.
Kevin, why don't you stay online with me for a bit so we deal with
Okay.
it?
So we still have folks leaving. It's dropping 27, 26, 25, 24. It's like being in an elevator here.
So what's going to happen, Kevin, is when you hit stop on the record, it's going to take a little while to process the recording. So just let that run out. And it's going to save the recording to your hard drive. So
Oh, it's been saving it to the cloud, it says. I don't know how or where.
okay. Well, at any rate, once it ends, just let it process the recording, and then I'll circle back with you later.
Okay.
I just need to know where to pick it up.
Yes. When I go over the little blinky dot, it says recording to the cloud.
Yep. So I'm gonna go ahead and
you can end the meeting.
Well,
Or-
you
or-
go ahead and stop the recording since we're officially out of the meeting, and I'll
Okay, I'm going to stop the video. There we go. Well, at least that stopped. Oh, it just stops my video.
Yep. Well, should stop your. Go ahead and hit stop on the recording. Should be able to just click on the record icon.
Oh, here I can stop recording. Tick. There we go. Do you want to stop recording? Cloud recording. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna reclaim the host, and is it doing anything on your side there, Kevin?
Is it doing anything?
Do you see any kind of processing going on with the recording?
No.
Okay. All right. Good enough. All right. With that, I'm just gonna take back the host then and end the meeting.
Okay.
And
screen sharing has stopped. It says okay. I'm like, okay. Yep. And I just have this record button like I did in the beginning down there.
Yep. So I'll oh, okay. So you hit record to the cloud. Gotcha. All right. Good enough.
So I don't know where it went in the cloud.
Yeah, it's I'll track it down.